Wrong week to quit sniffing glue.
You came nothing? You're braver than I thought.
Hey, welcome back. It is episode 3 of the PG Millennium Falcon build, and as you can see, I have a bare table. First thing I did this Monday morning, got up nice and early, cleaned everything down, and since I'm going to be painting this week, I went ahead and taped down some craft paper. Just I got a roll of craft paper at Lowe's, cost next to nothing. Use it for wrapping boxes when I send it out, and I thought it would be a great way to keep the table clean and not have to go through all this stuff again. I can just rip it up and throw it away when I'm done painting. But because I'm painting, and I'm painting a very large thing, don't have to worry about overspray on the table if I've got this craft paper down. Plus it gives me a nice Tatooine texture, Tatooine color scheme. So Tatooine, ooh, that sounds like a porn title from the 80s. Sorry about that. Let's go get the ship and put it down. Okay, so I'm doing a little bit of robbing Peter to pay Paul this morning. I heard the concerns about whether or not a 9-volt battery could handle this light for any length of time. So what I've done is I've taken one of the little tiny 12-volt batteries out of this Falcon and put it in this Falcon to light up this strip. It's about 10:30 now, 20 to 11, and I'm just going to let it run and see how long it lasts. It's nice and bright. This wasn't a brand new battery to start with, so we'll factor that in. But I'm going to be working on getting this battery area thing secured today before I start into the wide-scale painting, because I'm going to be doing a lot of flipping and flopping, and I want to make sure that things don't rattle out of place. So just as a stress test, I've turned that on. I'm going to see how long it lasts. I don't mind swapping. If I get a good afternoon out of these batteries, I don't mind swapping that out. It's easy enough to change. Built to be changeable, and these little guys are a lot easier to hide than the 9 volts. I could even put Velcro that down here and put a couple of spares next to it for when I need it. So like I said, we're just going to let it run and see how long she lasts. It's about 11:15, and I noticed that the 12-volt again was not a new battery, was starting to dim down. So now I've taken this again, not new 9-volt, and I'm going to put the same test to it to see how long it lasts. This was starting to dim. I want to try them out with brand new batteries. I didn't give them a fair shake, but when I run out today to put some stuff in the mail, I'll pick up some fresh batteries and we'll start again. But I think the 9-volt is maybe a better bet. We'll see how more resilient it is. Hey, I'm back. I took a break for a while, ran some stuff to the post office, and worked in the yard for a couple of hours. It is now coming up on it's past 3 o'clock. It's almost a quarter after. So from a quarter after 11 to a quarter after 3, there's 4 hours, and it's maybe dimmed a little bit, but not so much that I would call it, too dim. So, and that's again on a not new battery. So I am confident that, and that's 4 hours straight. You're never going to run this thing 4 hours straight, except maybe in a show, in which case I would make sure that I started with extra fresh batteries and, got permission from the judges every once in a while to go in and turn it off, turn it back on. But yeah, I'm quite happy with 9 volts in that strip. So now that I know that, I can go ahead and build up the little battery box that I was planning and get that last bit buttoned up so that I can start my painting. Good morning. Here we are. It is Tuesday, and last night I put a good coat or two of a mixture of this the Mecha color off-white on the Falcon kit. You can see that the dark spots, the shading isn't as dark as it used to be. And as expected or suspected, I did have to put in a couple drops of the Mecha sand primer because the white was too cool of a white. Even though it was off-white, it was not quite creamy enough. So it was giving me the cool whites, and I don't want the cool whites. I want the desert whites for this. I want creaminess of it. So it wasn't covering quite as thickly as I would have liked it to. It was kind of watery, not as much pigment as I would like. And I found myself having to plaster it on to get the color or to get the coverage that I wanted. So I thought it best to back off and let that dry and then come back in and put another coat down today so as to not get any drips and runs and all that kind of stuff. If I still don't get what I'm looking for, I may miss a light coat of a Tamiya over top of this, because Tamiya's one thing I can say about them is they do know how to make a coverage with Tamiya. So that's where I'm at. And I don't want to get too much done on the top before I, flip it over and do the bottom, so that I don't go out completely out of whack getting all the top done, and then come back and find that the bottom needs to be caught up. I want to kind of keep it even as I go, so I don't lose my formulas and all that kind of stuff. So having had the first top coat on the top here, I think it's time to flop it over and do the bottom. Now to do that, I need to get some sort of foam apparatus out here, because while this can sit on its feet, when I flip it over, there's some detail here that I want to make sure does not get broken off. So let me whip up some or find some foam in all of the packing materials that I have. I've got some of that soft packing foam to put this on. Here's my money saving tip for the day, because at my heart of hearts I'm a cheap SOB, and I may have brought this up before, but if not, here's your lesson again. If you go to your big box store, your local Walmart, and you try to find packing foam, and you go up into the craft area, you will pay through the nose for soft packing foam. If you take about 20 steps to the left and you go into the bedding area, you will find something like this, which is a foam mattress cover. You put this on top of your mattress and it adds another level of support to you or whatever. It is the same damn thing. It is foam, but you can get enough to cover a queen size bed for like $9, as opposed to paying through the nose to get it if you buy it in smaller pieces in the craft section. So walk around, see where you can find your bargains, but it has different types of patterns and amounts of texturing, which matters very little in the grand scheme of things, but I'm going to cut a chunk out of it to rest the Falcon on. And here you go, and now you can see how much contrast compared to the top I got rid of with that top coat. So now I'm going to put a similar coat on the bottom, although the bottom should be dirtier. Anybody who knows anything or purports to know anything about aircraft, ships, whatnot, you're going to have more dirt on the bottom. That's what gets all of the atmospheric burn. That's what gets all of the dust that gets kicked up when your landing jets fire. It's just going to be dirtier on the bottom. So live with it. Embrace it. Make your bottom dirty. And that's your message for today. Okay, the bottom is caught up. Now, I did things slightly differently than I did the top. And with each pass, I am learning more and more. What I did this time on the bottom was to start with a coat of Tamiya that was this color. You can see the color right there. It is a warm white. It is actually not as brown as it looks there. That should be smeared out a little bit. It is certainly a white or a gray that has some yellowish and browns put into it, but I did that first, and then I went over the top of that, mixing with a straight off-white rather than trying to mix the color in the Vallejo Mecha colors. This is a straight off-white over top of this coat, and not only did that allow me to use less paint overall, because I was really having to lay on the Mecha color to get the final thing that I wanted. But it did give me a better covering coat, because to me, it's cover better than Vallejos. That's just what I have found to be true. So this is a much better base coat, and I consider this base coat with all of the greeblies and shadows and shading into it. This is what I call my base color. And now, after this dries, what I'm going to do is throw down a coat of the chipping medium. See if I can find it here. I know I've got it. The chipping medium over the panels where I want, where the reds and the darker grays, excuse me, where the ivories and the darker grays and the reds go. I want to put chipping medium over that and let that dry, and then I'll be ready to put in the final flat colors. Then there is a flat colors. I'm trying to go through this in my head. Get all the flat colors down, chipping medium, flat colors, and then probably weathering and washes and things like that, and then going back in and chipping the paint fresh. So I think that's what I want to do, but I am up for changing my mind at any moment, as you know by now. So let's let this dry and come back in a bit. Alrighty, I just spent the last few minutes taking care of a long-standing problem, not a problem, but something I had to do. And if I pop this off, you can see what I needed to do was to finally officially wire up this light back here. And what I've done is just stuck a big chunk of the heavy part, or the stiff part, of some Velcro onto the back of the box, the Bandai box that I promised I would never say Bandai box again, but the Bandai box. And here you have a battery with a fuzzy side stuck to it, and a wee little switch that I just cut out of a piece of tea light, because the switch was already in it. So I just hacked it off square and ran the wires out to it. But I've got tape over this now to keep the paint off of it, or else you would see how bright it is. But I can go in here now and pop that off and pop it on and get to the other switches on the Bandai box. I still am toying with the idea of installing magnets, because it doesn't want to, and I don't know exactly why. It needs a bit of persuading to lay flat, and maybe some magnets would hold it in place, give you a belt and suspenders type of thing, just maybe down in these lower corners. So that's something to ponder while the paint is drying, and I am thinking about the next step. Again, this is to a point where, shadows and all, I am ready to paint the flat colors of paneling. No, I'm sorry. First, I have to do the chipping medium. Then I can do the flat colors. And in the flat colors, it's interesting because I have put a creamish color over all of this. You may not be able to tell that easily on the video, but it is a creamish base color. And there are cool gray panels, and there are actually whiter panels that I think you will see once I put those colors down. You will see the contrast between the base color and what you would traditionally think of as white. So I'm looking forward to doing that. Got to get the map out and map the panels. And I might even do a little paint by number deal where I put a dot on each panel that is going to get paint and what color it's going to be, so that I can keep that straight in my mind once I've got the airbrush loaded with that particular color of paint. Doing some playing, putting in the two different shades of gray on the bottom here. There are darker, there's like a medium gray, and then there's a light gray. And the whiter and yellower you make the rest of the Falcon, or the creamier you make the rest of the Falcon, the more these colors stand out. And there is in fact almost a white that needs to be put on, and that will stand out better if you have creamed up the rest of it. So putting these on, and then I'm just using regular old painter's tape, because it's evident in the big builds of the actual props that they painted right over top of pipes, and they painted right up through all these little cutout teethy bits. They weren't that particularly fussy about following those with their paint, so makes it easier to mask that way. But then after this, there's a warm gray panel. It's like these guys right here is a warm gray. What I'm doing is this color and this color, and then there's this and the red yet to do, and I'll probably hold off and do that tomorrow. Then there's a couple of touches like these of a almost bright yellow, but more of a very light tan that goes there. So it's a little extra bits there. That's where we're going to leave it for this evening. I got the 2 shades of gray, not the 50 shades of gray, but the 2 shades of gray on the top and the bottom of the hamburger of love here. And I'm going to let that dry overnight, come back, see how I like it in the morning. But then it'll be time to warm it back up because the tan / yellow panels need to go on next. And then lastly the red, because that red is such a strong color that I don't want to put it on now and have to really scrub out the airbrush. I can kind of let it slide between the shades of gray as far as cleaning out the brush, but then I can work into tan tomorrow and then finally into red and then scrub out the brush after that. But that's these look darker than they should. I want to come back in and hit the highlights again with maybe a dry brush or something, just to bring those back up, bring up the details a little bit. I'm noticing things on camera that I don't like that don't quite seem that bad in real life, but on camera look a bit nasty, and this is chief amongst it. It looks way too contrasty. So I'll hit those again tomorrow, but looking good for the end of the night, and we'll come back at it with fresh eyes in the morning. Good morning, welcome back. It is Wednesday already, and as you can see, I've gotten the grays on. This morning I went in and did that creamy yellow, or the creamy tan bits there, and now the big distinctive red stuff. And then after I do the big distinctive red stuff, I'll go in and touch any little bits or bobs that I may have missed. There's some very yellow bits up in here, but I want to go ahead and get the red on, get some red on it, so that it'll all start to look like it's making sense. Okay, starting to put the red down in various spots, and you can see where I've put it over the chipping medium, where it's already starting to bubble up like that. So I think that's going to bode well when it comes to actually doing the chipping part of that. We'll just have to see how drastically that goes. The reddening is done on the top, and yeah, it looks a little bright. I'm hoping that the weathering will take some of that down. By the time I put some washes over that, it will darken it up a bit. I tried to match the color of the decals, and I think I came pretty close, but it could stand to be a little darker. What you gonna do? Like I said, I think I can take that down with the washes. So let's let this dry for a little bit and flip it over and do the ones on the bottom. Well, there you go. All of the red paint on the bottom has been painted, and I've taken off the painter's tape, and that, of course, to me is the riskier part of the whole proposition, because if you've got a bit of paint on your tape that isn't dry yet and you end up peeling that up, you could put yourself in a world of hurt that you don't want to be in, because tape can sometimes take longer to dry on the tape, or paint, sorry, can take longer to dry on the tape than it does on the model. So got to be really sure, especially when you're dealing with red paint, that your the paint on the tape is kept off of places you don't want it to be. So now what I've got is I've got a couple random spots, so like these spots right here where there's a darker tan and there's a mustard yellow right there. Those are the ones I've got to do now. So I need to give the brush a good scrubbing, boil it down, get all the red paint out of it, and get ready to touch up these tiny bits. I don't think they could be done. I'm gonna check. I may be able to hand paint those as small as they are. I might not need to clean out a brush just for that. Let's see. Now they're a little bit bright, but hey, like I said, hopefully that stuff gets toned down. But easier to paint them on by hand than to go through the whole, put it through the airbrush for just that little bit. Plus, when I put my chipping medium to work on it and then spray a finish over the top of it, it's going to minimize those brush strokes. So there you go. It looks like I've got all of my color panels done. And now I'm going to let this sit for a while. I'm going to play with it. I can't do both. I'm either going to let it sit or I'm going to play with it. Make up your mind. I'm going to let it sit for a while and then come back. And then take a look at what needs to be done as a next step. I think what I'd like to do is to try my hand at some of this chipping medium and see how well it chips out. And then I'll be ready to put a wash over it. I don't know whether to wash first and then chip, or chip and then wash. And then you start putting all the little tiny streaks of grime and goo in it. So getting there. Still might finish this week, but it's going to take a whole day just, I think, to put these well, it's not going to take a whole day, because I tell you what, I'm not putting all those tiny decals on. I'll put on a gracious plenty of them, but I don't think I'm going to put all of them on. And you know what else I'm not going to do? I'm not going to go and put those little black dashes all over the dang thing. That's just madness. Nobody wants to see that. So there you go. But yeah, those are bringing out those plates. Now I got to kind of minimize them. Got to kind of blend them back in so they don't look so stark and you know, patch quilty. Okay, this is going moderately successfully. I'm not 100% hip on the results here, but hey, you know, something new. I haven't tried it before. The chipping medium, I really can't see where it's helping all that much. Basically what I'm doing is going in here with the old dental pick and just scraping off paint. Maybe the chipping medium underneath it is making it slightly easier to do, but I don't know, because there's no spot on here that doesn't have the chipping medium on it, so I can't prove a negative. But yeah, okay, I'll take it a little bit at a time, and then there's a dirt wash to go over this again, and then we should be able to tell. But yeah, it's not too shabby. I'm looking at the decals, trying to get an idea from them about what areas need to be. I'm sorry, I got wandering zoom finger. What areas need to be chipped more or less. Those ones came out pretty nice, I think. But we're taking it as it goes. It's going to be a long road. Okay, working on just this quadrant right here. Well, actually, it's not an entire quadrant. It's an eighth, maybe half a quadrant. The red definitely chips better than most of the other colors. I really like the way that turned out, and it was more or less, and that one, more or less painless to do. The other one, the other colors, the other pigments are not chipping as easily. But going by the decals, there's a couple gray panels that need to be chipped up, but most of the gray and the other panels don't have that many chips on them, so we're good. And then I'm taking some of the Vallejo oil stain engine acrylic and just tracing them down around panel lines and things like that, trying to accentuate some damage and oil drippage and things like that. Getting the grime back into it, I think it's going to work out just fine. It's also giving me that yellowish tinge that I was hoping for, more so than the cool grays. So it's just a matter of carrying that over, and it's just, you know, working a little bit at a time and then dabbing it off with a Q-tip. It's nothing sexy or glamorous, it's just getting down to it. So we'll see how easy that's going to be to carry over the rest of the whole entire top and the bottom. So may not get this finished this week, and I was maybe foolish to think that I was, but we'll take our time. We're not in any rush. Morning, welcome back. It is Thursday, and taking my good old sweet time on this Falcon build, the PG Falcon, and I discovered a problem yesterday. Not a problem, but a change in the weather. I was starting to do the detailing on just this section of the ship last time, if you'll recall, and I was running into a problem, and that was since the weathering stuff I am using is water-based, it was reactivating the chipping medium and basically gumming up things. I probably went too whole hog on applying the chipping medium. I know better now. I know you're only supposed to apply it where you want to, but I didn't know exactly where I wanted it, so I just sprayed the whole dang thing with it, and that was not the way to go. Having learned that lesson, model building is as much about learning as it is about building, and every day you learn something new. Sometimes you learn good things, sometimes you learn bad things. The bad thing I learned is to be a little less heavy-handed with the chipping medium. Anyway, what happened is it kept reactivating the chipping medium in the places where I didn't really use it to chip the paint. So what I decided to do was go ahead and chip all of the paint that I was going to chip. And how much wood would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood, as the old saying goes, is how much paint would a paint chipper chip if a paint chipper could chip paint. And that's all you're getting on a Thursday morning. I'm sorry. So that brings me back to what I'm going to do. I chipped the rest of the paint on the rest of the top that I wanted to do. Now what I've got to do is spray it with a clear finish, either a satin or a gloss, probably a satin clear Krylon like I've used 1,000 times before. And what that's going to do is hopefully seal this chipping. It will seal everything that is on the ship now and allow me to not only go in and put the oil spills and that kind of weathering in that will actually make it easier for it to wipe off because it's wiping off of a gloss surface, and also at the same time get the surface ready for decals because I've got a million tiny decals to put down. So what I'm going to do is chip the bottom. I have not gotten to any of the bottom, and I'm going to chip that and then get the whole ship ready for a good dousing of a satin clear finish. And you know what? This is one instance where if it yellows, it actually works in my favor because I'm going for that slightly yellow tinge. But you can see this is the color palette that I'm looking at, and that's happening because of the oil stain wash that I'm putting on it. So that's actually working. I'm happy with the colors that I've got. I thought it was going to be too blue, too cool gray for a while, but I'm happy with that. I'm happy with I did a little bit of this yesterday. I'm happy with how the rust is working on the side. That I'm happy with. But like I said, every time I went with the water-based washes, it was reactivating the chipper. So let's flip this whole thing over, and you can see the unchipped side, the unchipped bottom. And I'm actually going to demonstrate the chipping. The red loves, the red paint is the best for the chipping medium. It really does like it. The grays, not so much, but the reds do. So what I'm going to do is get my tools out, get everything ready for doing some paint chipping on the red panels. Make friends with your local dentist. If you don't want to have one of these, sometimes they'll throw out their old dental picks, and this has become the best tool I have for chipping the paint. So let's get this bottom ready to clean off the table here a little bit, and we'll get back into the chipping business. Okay, we're gonna start letting the chips fall where they may. I know I had to get that out, I'm sorry. I'm going to do this panel right here. I'm not going to show you all of the panels because that would be repetitive and boring. But basically what I'm doing is getting the area wet. And you can do this with a brush, you can do it with a Q-tip, you can do it with your elbow if you like. But basically I'm just re-wetting the area. Let that sit for a minute or two because this is the next day and I want to give that a chance to soak in. When I was doing it yesterday, it was all kind of very fresh. Now here is the decal that I have replaced with paint. So you can kind of see the areas on the decal that they would have you believe the paint was chipped in. So to emulate that, you're going to take the old pointy tool and just knock off a little bit here. See how easily that comes off. And a little bit, especially over these high spots, but down through here, a little bit there, some up here. Oh, that didn't get quite as wet, so it's not quite as easy. There you go. Again, moving from there up to here, looks like a little bit there, a little here, some around this corner, mostly over these high spots, and then one more down in here. Okay, now that we've got that kind of chipped where we want to, we can wipe off the excess. And this is a good stiff brush. This is a brush that's new. I haven't dunked it in anything yet, so the bristles are still kind of stiff. But what it can do is get the excess, sorry, I'm trying to see it in camera and in real life at the same time. And I'm just dragging that, pushing that up over the paint to try to clean up the chips and get them off of where they had accumulated. And I'm just going to widen this out a little bit more, take it off of these, and think about how paint would chip naturally. Ship goes, I'm looking back out, zoom out. This is front of ship, that is back of ship. Ship normally goes this way. Ship goes forward. Sometimes ship goes backwards, sometimes ship happens, but ship goes forward. So all damage and streaking and paint smears and stuff like that, you would have a tendency to believe go front to back because you're incurring the damage as you are flying. So this area here is going to get a lot of damage. Obviously the front edge is here is going to get a lot of damage. The front curve here is going to pick up a lot of damage. These lines here, this area here, that's going to get the brunt of a lot of it. The leading edges is what I'm saying. And a lot of these surfaces are going to be where you're going to pick up the damage. Not so much back here because you've got this area protecting that. So while it's true some of this stuff needs chipping, you got to kind of give it a protective, let me see, if you imagine this as the particles, if you're going to do that, then chances are it's not going to start picking up more damage until you get back to about there. This much is in shadow, for lack of a better term. This would get a whole bunch of damage, and that's what we're gonna do next after these guys. But this area here on this curve is going to pick up a lot of stress, and I'm just going through on these. And like I said, this is where you need to make friends with your dental hygienist, because sometimes they will toss their old equipment, their old instruments that are no longer sharp enough for dental work, but still, you know, good enough for model work. And it's like a step above the kind of tools you can find at your Harbor Freight or your tool stores. These guys are hardened steel. They've been, you know, used and abused, and they are a little bit more professional grade than that. So all I'm doing here is going through and with the scraper, it help if I'm on camera, Again, I'm watching what's on the camera and above me in real life at the same time. And I need to wet this down again. As far as figuring out where your damage should be and how your damage patterns should flow. Now, I'm going to say one thing here, and I've said it before, I'll say it again if you ask me to. I don't understand why all of the oil smears and things like that on the Falcon, you always see them going out conically. And it makes little to no sense. Only if there is, let's say, here is an oil, and I'll get into this more when I go to that weathering stage. But let's just say here's an oil leak. Now, while the Falcon is parked and laying, sitting on Docking Bay 94, that it's possible that oil leak would run down to the center. And then it would hit an edge and it would stop, and surface tension would make it drip. But if this is an oil leak that's happening while you're at light speed, it's going to be going back like everything else. That's why I never understood the 3 or the 6 main engines, how they, for some odd reason, they scorch out like that. They should all be scorching back the same way, because that's where your exhaust staining would happen if this thing is traveling, front to back. All your damage should be going front to back. It shouldn't be going out radially. Unless, he likes to sit in the Falcon and spin it for a while. But that's my soapbox, and I'll get off of it. So here we go. We've got some paint. We've got it chipped off. We've got it chipped off in the direction of flight. And now we have to go back and decide whether it's enough or not. And here's where you can see some of that stuff gumming up from the panels that I didn't paint, but I still put the chipping medium on. You can hear that squeak. That chalkboard on, fingernails on chalkboard squeak of taking paint off. And again, this is areas that I didn't even get the liquid on, so let's go ahead and paint that up. Get some water on there, let the water soak in, let it bathe in its glory, and then come back in here. But this is all being made possible because of 2 things. A, the chipping medium, and B, this lovely dental tool. I wouldn't try, you could go in here with an X-Acto and try pulling some of that out, but not the best, I don't think. And this also gives you a good reason to go back over things like these pipes and just scrape the paint off the top of the pipes, because that would really be the first thing to go if you were dealing with real paint in the real world. And that just, it doesn't have to be a whole lot, just subtle. And then take a dry brush and just dry everything off. And now this section here has been aged, and it is ready for a clear coat and the oil washes and things like that. But there you go. It's as quick and as easy as that to scrape your paint up and age it. Continuing work down the back side here of the underneath of the Falcon, and this is what I wanted to tell you or show you earlier about paint being in the shade. This area right here I would consider being in the shade. You wouldn't get a lot of I would say wind damage, for lack of a better term, as far as helping you peel off your paint. This is very subtle, but I like what it's doing here. It's taken off that down to the undercoat paint. Now, these areas here, don't get me wrong, they'll get plenty of attention when it comes to oil spills and whatnot, and rust, because that's exactly where that kind of stuff would collect. You might not see so much rust up here in you know, broad daylight, so to speak. But back here, you might see that. So don't worry that it's not getting enough love and attention. It will. And the red continues to be the most successful color as far as the chipping. But all I have is this back portion here to do, and then I'll be done with the chipping and ready to seal this guy up with a good coat of clear and get ready for the big weathering and oiling and griming and all that kind of stuff. And again, everything I'm keeping is chipping back in this direction, the direction of movement. So let's finish it up. Okay, a little bit more scuffing and scaling on the paint. Happy with what this looks like on the bottom. And now it's just a question of sealing it in and letting that sealing coat get nice and cured so that I can start the really fun stuff of throwing washes at it and all that kind of stuff. I'm doing the weathering. And that'll be a wrap for right now so that I can go get this thing coated. Righty, the camera is fully charged and we are back in business, friends. The satin coat has dried. You have a semi-gloss look to the Falcon. I have been brushing in the washes, the oil spill, and the let's see which one I'm going to use. Oil stains and petrol spill. Basically, just taking letting it drop. Let's zoom in on this thing, see what I'm doing. Just take a little bit of that, let it find its level, and then I'm taking I'll do this for a bit, trace down the panel lines, and it is darkening up the red a bit. And then just basically going in on top of that with a Q-tip and just blotting up a bit. Not all of it, but the excess. Letting it lay in the cracks and crevices. But and then come through. And the nice thing about having that gloss coat is, you can almost wipe it completely back off again. So if I put too much on, I can just go back in with a wet, dampened Q-tip and take it right back off. But that is precisely the look I am going for. So all I need to do is carry that over the rest of the kit, rest of the ship, and we'll be in high clover. So that's basically what I'm going to be doing for the next, I don't know, 6 to 8 weeks. Okay, this is going pretty quickly. Now don't pay attention too much to the shine. That will get knocked back with a flat coat when I'm all done. What I'm interested in is where the pockets of grime are sticking and the coloration, which is giving me that richer, warmer yellows that I was looking for. Those are all going in nicely, and I'm able to use larger areas now that I'm not fretting over each individual panel, so I can get a more unified splash, if you will, of the oil spills and things like that. So this is going very well. I'm going to continue. Let me try this nose piece. I'm doing odd mixtures of petrol spill and oil stain and petrol spill, and I think there's one other one. Well, there's a rust one in here I want to try, but that's more for the stuff on the side. I don't expect to see too much rust as we understand rust. Not too much rust there. It's going to be more in the mechanics around the edge and probably some on the bottom. This, I just want oil spills. Well, I'm back. It's Friday. Did some work this morning before I left. I went ahead and coated the bottom, and then I went to go see Avengers Endgame, which took all morning. Seriously, it started at 10:30. Didn't get out till 2 o'clock. That's with all the trailers and stuff. I'm not going to tell you anything about it except epic. Epic. Big epic. Well worth the 11 years or 10 years of Marvel movies that led up to it. But that's all I'm going to say about that. So, where are we? Back on the Falcon. All shiny, all painty. I don't like the look of it this way because it is shiny, but it's shiny for a purpose. I've got to put the decals on it. Really, that's all that's left. I've done the dirtying. I've done the dirty deed. I'm gonna put the decals on it, then flat coat it, and then the last thing will be to go in and draw in with some pencils and some pastels to do the tiny minuscule streaking, just the little bits, and then probably a flat coat to seal all that in, and then it'll be done. But that's I don't know how much of that's going to happen today. We might carry that into next week because here we are at the end of April. Wonderfest is chugging around that corner, pal. It's chugging around the corner, and it's going to catch us before we know it. So I have got to get this guy done because next month I need to be picking out what I'm going to be taking to Wonderfest and cleaning all that up, getting that ready to meet the people, so to speak. And that's our goal. So, one last look at the Falcon, and then we will wrap it up. No, come on. It's 3 o'clock. I've got some more time today. We'll take a look at this. I was getting ahead of myself. I'm sorry. Yeah, so here you go. You can see, if you look closely, that in the corners, in the nooks, in the crannies, just like a good old English muffin, this has got the oil and the grease spills in there. And what it does really is by putting these washers on and then wiping them off, you're introducing a little bit of chaos that you would never be able to do by hand without making it look planned and symmetrical and all that kind of stuff. You got to introduce a little bit of random madness in it, and the only way to take yourself out of the situation or out of the equation is to take yourself out of the equation. You put the clear washes down, and then you splash them, and you do a little rub off. And yeah, there's some technique involved. There's a skill set involved. But you're not meticulously planning each little drab and drop and, ooh, I want to put a white spot there and a red spot there and you just can't. You'll drive yourself nuts doing that. And it's going to be hard enough once I start putting all the little streaks in. But I think this is a good piece down the road. I still have some work to do. Obviously, I've got to get the... now, this is always going to come off because it's a posable action figure if you do it this way. If you glue it in place, it's a model. If you leave the dish posable, then it's an action figure. And I still have to put the guns on. Hey, the sun's out. Sun's out. Guns out. Yeah, so it's been one of those days. It's been raining, and then the sun comes back out, and then it starts raining again. Anyway, these guys got to go in, and then the landing gear have to go on and things like that. There's 1,000,006 little details yet. I don't want to get ahead of myself as far as pretending this is anywhere near finished. It's near finished, but it's not very near finished. Things like this, like painting in the damage, and this to me is working. This is precisely what I want. I'll add a little bit of hand paint, a little bit of rust into some crevices. But really, you can go 7/10 of the way down the road just by putting on a wash and wiping it off. It really adds the level of detail that I'm looking for. Now, when it comes to the bottom, let me take this dish off again. When it comes to the bottom, take that gun off. I want the bottom side to be a lot browner because I'm gonna go over it with a spray of the sand dust because it should be darker than the top because it gets a lot more of the atmospheric entry, and also when it kicks up dust when it's landing on your favorite desert planet, it should still have some stuff caught in the details where it kicked up sand from the last time. So that's the kind of stuff I'm going to be doing today, is a lot of little picayune dust settling. Well, this, I think, is where we're going to leave it for the week. I am actually going to do something that I rarely, if ever, do, and that is I'm going to ask other people for their opinions, because, sometimes the peasants, they know what they're talking about. No, seriously, I'm to a point where I think this might need another go-round, but if also it's possible that I could end up overworking it. So what I'm going to do is step away at least for a day or two and come back to it and see if I feel it needs more. Yes, the decals have to go on it yet. Yes, it has to be flat coated. But I need to know if I should add another go-round of weathering before I call it a done thing. I went in and went around all the edges, went around all the perimeters here with the rust, because the rust is going to be in these mechanical areas much more than it is going to be on the top. So that's where she's going to sit for the week, and we should be able to finish this up next time. I might even work on it some over the weekend. Hard to tell. Well, there you go. That's it for episode 3 of the Millennium Falcon, the PG Falcon build. And next week will be the concluding week. Fittingly, will be episode 4, A New Hope. But as far as Revenge of the Grime, this is where she sits. Nice and fully. That's got a nice heft to it by the time you put all the lighting and everything in it and get all the parts built onto it. It feels solid. Doesn't have the Bandai squeak. So that was an important thing to do. So I'm gonna do this and just kind of come up from behind, sort of like the Death Star from showing up over the horizon. So here you go. Until next week, when we will most certainly be finishing this. Y'all be good. Be good to each other. We'll see you here next time.
No reward is worth this.